They replaced me with a plug-in. Not to my face, of course. They said I could step back, consult, transition into legacy mode. But everyone in the room knew what it meant. The label had signed a multi-year deal with a production suite called Sonic Frame, an AI-based mastering system that promised flawless, on-demand, emotionally adaptive sound. Why chase vibe, the representative had said, when the algorithm already knows what people want to feel? My name is Miles Keene. I've worked in analog audio for 32 years. I've mic'd jazz quartets in hotel basements, balanced choirs in century-old churches, and rebuilt tube preamps in my garage just to get that one hissless whisper of warmth. The last record I engineered won a Grammy, but Sonic Frame mastered it in 4 minutes. And that was all they needed to see. They didn't fire me. That would have been messy. They just stopped calling. The room I once lived in, Studio B, was retrofitted with LED strips and a, quote, feedback visualization wall. They gutted the old Neve console and replaced it with a touchscreen. More intuitive, the tech said. More efficient. I said nothing. Just watched as they boxed up the patch cables I'd soldered by hand. That week, I went home and opened the drawer I hadn't touched in years. The one marked tapes. Inside were hundreds of reels. Sessions that never saw daylight. Artists no one remembered. Rough mixes. Outtakes. Ghosts. I pulled one reel at random. Haley /Session 3B, Untitled /June 2008. I remembered her. The singer with a voice like dusk. She'd recorded 3 tracks and disappeared before we finished. No social media. No website. Just a name on a scrap of gaffer tape. I threaded the reel, hit play. And for a moment, I forgot everything. There it was. Air. Room noise. Her breath before the lyric. The tiniest crack at the end of a note she meant to hold, but didn't, because she was feeling it too hard. It wasn't perfect. It was human. And it was better than anything Sonic Frame had touched, so I pulled more tapes. Sessions forgotten. Takes too raw for commercial release. All of them with something the machines hadn't been taught how to hear soul. And that's when I knew. They hadn't erased me, they just opened a door. And I still had the keys. The first mix I restored wasn't even labeled. It was buried between 2 gospel reels. No track sheet, just a Sharpie scrawl, Late Night DB. I threaded it up and hit play. A guitar came in, finger-picked, clumsy, real. Then a voice, cracked and low, barely singing above a whisper. No chorus, no hook, but halfway through, something shifted. He hit one note, a single, aching bend, and I felt it, like a bruise pressed just hard enough to remember how you got it. I didn't EQ it, didn't clean the hiss, just let it play. Then I uploaded it to a burner SoundCloud account I hadn't touched in years. No name, no context. By morning, it had 14,000 plays. By night, it had 200,000. Someone posted, "This isn't a song, it's a memory." Meanwhile, Sonic Frame started slipping. Nothing dramatic, just sterile. One pop artist posted a TikTok breakdown of her mix and said, "Why does this feel like an IKEA couch covered in glitter?" I laughed harder than I had in months. The next day, I got a knock on my studio door. She couldn't have been older than 20. Doc Martens, headphones around her neck, eyes like she hadn't slept but didn't want to yet. "You're Miles, right?" "Used to be." I heard something. On this account. No metadata, but it had your touch. "My touch?" She nodded. "The air. You leave in the air." Her name was Harper. She made indie folk loops out of field recordings and broke up her lyrics with silence. She said the label had run her demos through Sonic Frame 6 times and returned them, quote, optimized. They fixed what wasn't broken, she said. She wanted to record with me. I hadn't touched a live rig in over a year. My preamps were dusty. The old board blinked like it wasn't sure it could still wake up. But I agreed. We recorded at night. One mic. One room. No click track. She used the creak of my floorboards as a rhythm. When I played it back, she started crying. "Why does this sound like me?" she whispered. "Because it is you. We didn't upload it. Not yet. But I saved it to tape. Marked the reel." And I realized something. This wasn't a comeback. It was a return to something that had never left, just waited, humming beneath the noise. By the end of the week, Harper's track, still unnamed, still unreleased, had passed from hard drive to headphones like a secret being told in hushed reverence. She'd played it for a friend. That friend passed it to a producer, then a playlist curator, then a DJ. The kind who still spun vinyl in basements lit by candlelight, who whispered things like, "This feels like skin." Someone ripped it and posted a 45-second clip online. No tag, just a caption. "This isn't AI. This is a person." In 24 hours, it hit 1 million views. On day 3, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered anyway. "Mr. Keene," said the voice, clean and cold. "We've detected unauthorized distribution of copyrighted assets previously processed via our Sonic Frame mastering suite." "You mean the track you flattened into wallpaper?" "I mean intellectual property you do not own." They offered a settlement, a contract, a clause to fold Harper's track into their digital pipeline, repackaged, rebranded, and auto-distributed, with appropriate credit and updated commercial metadata. I told them I'd consider it. Then I hung up and unplugged my router. That night, Harper came back to the studio. She'd been quiet all day, not out of fear, out of clarity. "They're calling it analog core," she said. "Labels are scrambling." One exec said, "Find me the guy with the hiss." "That's you, right?" I nodded. "Always have been." She pulled out a check. Not big, not small. Folded in half. "I want to make a full record. On tape, with you." I looked at her. No label, only roots. We started that night. She tracked vocals in the hallway. Played acoustic inside the vocal booth because she liked the way the padding killed her fear. I didn't fix the creaks. I didn't kill the background hum. I layered it soft into the final mix like breath. We finished 3 songs in 2 days. I mailed dubs on reel-to-reel to 5 independent radio stations that still had tape decks. College kids. Pirate broadcasters. One was run out of a laundromat in Vermont. All 5 played the songs within the same week. By Friday, #NoFilterSound was trending. And Sonic Frame? It dropped a patch update to, quote, reintroduce warmth and noise floor ambiance. They called it vintage mode. I called it panic, because the truth was leaking, and nothing they coded could hide it anymore. They offered her 7 figures, not directly, of course, through a manager of a manager, joint venture, creative freedom, industry-defining vision. All the usual buzzwords, polished till they gleamed like chrome. Harper came to me with the contract in her hand and doubt in her eyes. They're saying I can record anywhere, even with you. Until they can't control it, I said. She didn't argue, just set the papers on the mixing console and stared at the board, at the dials I still tuned by ear, at the real decks she now threaded without asking. They called it a sound aesthetic, she said, like it was a filter. I pulled open a drawer, one she hadn't seen yet. Inside were 5 reels, each one labeled in pencil, barely legible, no artist names, just years. 1997, 2001, 2003, 2008, 2014. These, I said, are the sessions the machines couldn't master. Not because they were broken, but because they were alive. She blinked. You saved them? No, I said, they saved me. We listened to one. A saxophonist with hands that shook between takes. An alto riff so fragile it nearly broke apart. But when he hit the bridge, everything held, like muscle remembering how to be music. Harper cried again, not because it was sad, because it was real. That night, she made her choice. We released the first EP under a fake label, Dust and Amp. Bone recordings. No press. No platform. Just one line on the page, tracked to tape. Played by people. Left imperfect. Within 3 days, it was on 5 underground charts. Within a week, 3 artists who'd quietly ghosted major label contracts reached out asking if we were taking sessions. And then came the letter, not from Sonic Frame, from the label that dropped me, the one that gutted Studio B and replaced me with a touchscreen. They were reimagining their audio identity and wanted to bring me back as a legacy advisor. 6 figures. Full control. All the buzzwords again, now with guilt behind them. Harper watched me read it in silence. You going back? She asked. I looked at the offer, then at the tape we just finished, then at her. No, I said. We've already built something better. They just haven't realized it yet. She smiled. Not because we won, but because we didn't need to. It started as a ripple. An AM station in Detroit spun Harper's track during a midnight vinyl hour. Said it sounded like a voicemail from God. A film student used one of our tape sessions for a thesis short, no score, just breath, guitar, and rain through an open window. A well-known jazz trumpeter canceled his next album mastering session, walked into our studio, and asked, "You still got the real deck running?" Within a month, Dust and Amp. Bone wasn't a secret, it was a statement. Artists called it a refuge. Engineers called it a resurrection. One blog called us the anti-algorithm. We didn't even market. We just released. No compression wars, no auto EQs, no pitch correction. Just space, texture, human error. The kind that made you lean closer, not scroll past. And then, one day, Studio B called me, not the execs, the interns. They'd found my old schematics in the wall, literal blueprints of the console, tape paths, even the HVAC tweaks I'd added to minimize hum during vocal takes. They wanted to restore it properly. They asked if I'd help. I didn't say yes, but I sent them the original mic placement sheet, the one from Haley's 2008 session with the smudged fingerprint on the corner. They said it brought the room back to life. Meanwhile, Harper's record, Full Length Now, hit #1 on a folk chart that didn't even allow digital-only releases. She refused vinyl pressing until we found a plant that still did hand-poured lacquer. Every track had hiss, every track had weight, and everyone was hers. I stood in the booth the night she played the album for a crowd of 40, a warehouse gig, no phones allowed. Just chairs, analog speakers, and one woman singing into a vintage ribbon mic we rewired with copper salvaged from my first board. No one moved. No one scrolled. They listened. When the last note hung in the air, Harper turned to me and whispered, "We didn't save the sound." I looked at her. She smiled. We grew it back, and I knew she was right. Because they hadn't killed the old way, they just paused it, and it waited, quietly, warmly, like tape on a reel, until someone pressed record again.